The sun hung low over the Hidden Leaf Village, casting long shadows across the training grounds where Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha sparred with relentless intensity. Their fists clashed, sending shockwaves through the air, each movement a blur of speed honed through years of battle. Naruto's Rasengan whirred in his palm, a spinning vortex of chakra, while Sasuke's Sharingan eyes tracked every shift in his opponent's stance. Just as Naruto lunged forward, the unthinkable happened. His Rasengan flickered, then dissolved into nothing. Sasuke's Chidori, crackling with electricity, sputtered and died mid-strike. Both warriors staggered, their bodies suddenly heavy, their senses dulled. The world around them fell eerily silent, as if the very heartbeat of existence had been ripped away. Across the 5 great nations, Shinobi and Kunoichi collapsed, their chakra, the lifeblood of their power, gone without warning. In the hidden sand, Gaara's sand armor crumbled to dust, leaving him vulnerable for the first time in years. In the hidden mist, Mei Terumi's lava release evaporated before it could scorch the earth. Even the legendary tailed beasts, embodiments of immense chakra, roared in confusion as their energy drained into oblivion. Panic spread like wildfire. Without chakra, ninjutsu, genjutsu, and even basic medical techniques were impossible. The world of shinobi had been stripped of its foundation. Naruto gritted his teeth, his muscles burning from the sudden loss of his usual enhancements. Beside him, Sasuke's breath came in ragged gasps, his Rinnegan dull and lifeless. What the hell just happened? Naruto growled, fists clenched. Sakura, who had been observing their spar, rushed forward, her medical training useless without chakra to fuel it. I don't know, she admitted, eyes wide with fear, but if we don't have chakra, neither do our enemies. She was right. The balance of power had shifted catastrophically. Villages that relied on their Kekkei Genkai or advanced techniques were now as vulnerable as civilians. But not everyone was defenseless. In the shadows, figures stirred, mercenaries, rogue samurai, and those who had always relied on raw strength over chakra. A new threat emerged, those who had never depended on ninjutsu now held the advantage. A band of armored warriors, their faces hidden behind iron masks, descended upon a nearby outpost. Their leader, a hulking brute named Kuroda, swung a massive tetsubo with terrifying precision, crushing the disoriented shinobi who could no longer reinforce their bodies with chakra. Blood sprayed as bones shattered under the sheer force of his blows. One leaf ninja tried to form hand signs out of instinct, only for Kuroda to backhand him into a tree with a sickening crack. Pathetic, Kuroda sneered. You soft-bellied shinobi never learned how to fight without your tricks. Word of the attacks reached Naruto and his allies within hours. The Hokage, Shikamaru, convened an emergency meeting in the now chakra-deprived village. We're sitting ducks, he muttered, fingers steepled. Without chakra, our barriers are down, our communications are severed, and our defenses are crippled. Naruto slammed his fist on the table. Then we fight like we did before we ever had chakra. We don't need jutsu to protect our home. His determination ignited a spark in the others. Sasuke, though weakened, nodded. Our taijutsu and weapon skills remain. We adapt or die. The first real test came that night. Kuroda's forces, emboldened by their early victories, marched toward the hidden leaf, torches lighting their path like a swarm of fireflies. Naruto, Sasuke, and a hand-picked team of the village's strongest close combat fighters stood at the gates, weapons drawn. The air was thick with tension as the enemy charged. Naruto met Kuroda head-on, ducking under a sweeping strike of the tetsubo before driving his kunai toward the brute's ribs. Kuroda twisted, the blade grazing his armor, and retaliated with a knee to Naruto's gut. The impact sent Naruto skidding back, but he grinned through the pain. Not bad, he spat. But I've taken worse. Sasuke, meanwhile, weaved through the battlefield, his sword flashing as he parried and countered with lethal precision. A masked warrior lunged at him, katana raised, only for Sasuke to sidestep and drive his blade through the man's chest. Blood sprayed as he yanked the sword free, already turning to face the next threat. Sakura, despite lacking her superhuman strength, fought with brutal efficiency, her medical knowledge allowing her to target pressure points and weak spots. She dislocated an attacker's shoulder with a sharp twist, then drove her elbow into his throat, dropping him instantly. But the enemy kept coming, their numbers overwhelming. Just as the tide seemed hopeless, a war cry echoed from the trees. Rock Lee, his leg weights discarded, plummeted into the fray like a meteor. Even without chakra, his speed and strength were unmatched. He spun, his fists a whirlwind of destruction, sending enemies flying with each strike. The power of youth never fades, he declared, kicking a swordsman so hard his breastplate caved in. The battle raged on, a brutal clash of steel and sinew. Naruto, battered but unbroken, locked eyes with Kuroda. You think taking our chakra makes us weak? Naruto snarled, wiping blood from his lip. You don't know what we're really made of. With a roar, he launched forward, feinting left before driving his fist into Kuroda's jaw. The brute staggered, but before he could recover, Sasuke's sword flashed, severing the Tetsubo's chain. The weapon clattered to the ground, and Naruto capitalized, sweeping Kuroda's legs and pinning him with a dagger at his throat. The remaining invaders, seeing their leader defeated, faltered. One by one, they dropped their weapons and fled into the night. The village was safe, for now. But as Naruto stood amidst the carnage, he knew this was only the beginning. The world had changed overnight, and survival would demand more than just strength. It would require something deeper, something no enemy could steal. The true battle for the shinobi world had just begun. The world reeled as the last flickers of chakra vanished, leaving behind a crushing void. Shinobi who had once relied on their energy for everything, speed, strength, even the simplest illusions, now faced the raw brutality of combat without it. Naruto Uzumaki clenched his fists, his muscles burning as he forced his body to move faster than ever before, his instincts screaming at him to adapt or die. Across the battlefield, Sasuke Uchiha's Sharingan still tracked movement, but now it was purely visual, no chakra-enhanced predictions, no genjutsu. Just the cold, sharp focus of a warrior pushed to his absolute limit. The first clash was brutal. Gaara's sand, once a fluid extension of his will, now moved sluggishly, forced into motion by sheer physical effort. Rock Lee, ever the embodiment of pure taijutsu, lunged forward, his fists a blur even without chakra. His strikes were precise, each one carrying the weight of years spent training without relying on ninjutsu. Gaara barely dodged, his body twisting as Lee's kick grazed his ribs, sending him skidding back. You always were the strongest without it, Gaara admitted, wiping blood from his lip before retaliating with a sweeping kick of his own. Meanwhile, Sakura Haruno fought with surgical precision, her medical knowledge now her greatest weapon. She dodged a kunai aimed for her throat, countering with a crushing punch to her opponent's sternum. Bones cracked under the force, but the enemy ninja snarled, refusing to fall. Sakura gritted her teeth. Without chakra-enhanced strength, she had to rely on pure technique. She feinted left, then drove her elbow into his temple, sending him crashing to the ground. No chakra doesn't mean no power, she muttered, rolling her shoulders before charging back into the fray. Naruto and Sasuke fought back to back, their rivalry now a desperate alliance. Naruto's fists burned with the effort of raw combat, his knuckles split and bleeding as he traded blows with a rogue shinobi twice his size. Sasuke, ever the tactician, used his sword with lethal efficiency, parrying strikes before driving the hilt into his enemy's gut. You're slowing down, Sasuke taunted, though his own breath came ragged. TCH. Like you're doing any better, Naruto shot back before ducking under a wild swing and slamming his palm upward into his attacker's chin. The man staggered, and Sasuke finished him with a swift slash. But the true terror of the battlefield was Madara Uchiha. Even without chakra, his presence was suffocating. His movements were calculated, his centuries of experience making him nearly untouchable. He fought Kakashi and Might Guy simultaneously, dodging Guy's whirlwind kicks with eerie grace before countering with a devastating elbow to Kakashi's ribs. You insects thought losing chakra would level the field? Madara sneered, catching Guy's wrist mid-punch and twisting hard enough to make the bone creak. Guy roared, flipping over Madara's shoulder and driving his knee into the Uchiha's spine. Madara stumbled, just for a second, but it was enough. Kakashi lunged, his tanto aimed for Madara's throat. The blade scraped skin before Madara twisted, delivering a crushing kick to Kakashi's side that sent him flying. The battle reached its breaking point. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Lee regrouped, their bodies battered but their resolve unbroken. We can't beat him with strength alone, Sasuke panted. Then we outthink him, Naruto growled. Sakura nodded. Distract him. I'll find an opening. Lee flashed a bloody grin. Leave the speed to me. The final assault began. Lee sprinted forward, his movements a blur even without chakra, forcing Madara to focus solely on him. Naruto and Sasuke flanked, striking in unison, Naruto with brute force, Sasuke with deadly precision. Madara blocked, countered, but for the first time, he was being pushed back. Then Sakura struck. She had been waiting, studying Madara's patterns, and the instant he overextended, she drove her fist into his ribs with a force that cracked bone. Madara gasped, his breath stolen. The world seemed to freeze. Then, with a roar of defiance, Naruto slammed his fist into Madara's jaw, sending the legendary warrior crashing to the ground. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered earth and smoldering chakra residue, the sky choked with dust as Naruto and Sasuke stood back to back, their breaths ragged, their bodies pushed beyond any limit they had ever known. Around them, the remnants of their allies lay strewn, some unconscious, others barely clinging to life. The enemy, a monstrous entity born from the collective despair of a world without chakra, loomed before them, its form shifting between shadow and grotesque flesh. "This ends now," Naruto growled, his voice hoarse but unbroken, his fists trembling as he forced himself upright. Sasuke's Sharingan flickered, his Rinnegan dimming, both knew they had one last chance. The beast surged forward, tendrils of darkness lashing out like whips. Naruto dodged, his instincts sharp even as his chakra-less muscles screamed in protest. He vaulted over a strike, landing a brutal punch to the creature's flank, but it barely flinched. Sasuke moved in tandem, his sword flashing as he carved through the shadows, but the wound sealed instantly. "It's adapting," Sasuke hissed. The creature roared, its maw splitting wide as it unleashed a shockwave of pure force, sending both warriors skidding backward. Naruto's vision blurred, his ribs aching, he could taste blood. But then, a memory flashed, Hinata's voice, soft but firm, "Even without chakra, your strength comes from your heart." His fingers dug into the dirt. He didn't need chakra. He never had. Sasuke, too, seemed to reach the same realization, his eyes narrowing with grim resolve. They exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. This wasn't about power. It was about will. With a wordless cry, Naruto charged, his body moving on sheer instinct, every punch, every kick fueled by years of unyielding determination. Sasuke flanked, his swordplay precise, his movements honed by a lifetime of discipline. The creature faltered, its form destabilizing as their combined assault disrupted its core. "Now," Naruto roared, driving his fist into its center. Sasuke's blade followed, piercing deep. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, light. A blinding explosion of energy erupted as the creature shattered, its fragments dissolving into nothingness. The silence that followed was deafening. Naruto collapsed to his knees, his body spent, his vision swimming. Sasuke slumped beside him, his sword clattering to the ground. Around them, the others stirred, their faces etched with disbelief. They had won. But the cost was clear. The world would never be the same. Without chakra, the shinobi way was forever altered. Villages would have to rebuild, not just their homes, but their identities. Naruto looked at Sasuke, a tired smirk tugging at his lips. "Guess we'll have to find a new way to settle our fights, huh?" Sasuke scoffed, but there was no malice in it. "Idiot," he muttered, but his voice lacked its usual edge. In the days that followed, alliances formed in ways no one had anticipated. Former enemies worked side by side, their old grudges meaningless in the face of survival. Sakura led the medical efforts, her knowledge proving invaluable even without chakra-enhanced healing. Kakashi, ever the strategist, helped restructure their defenses. And Naruto? He stood at the center of it all, not as a hero, but as a symbol of resilience. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs. And as the sun set over the ruins of the old world, Naruto knew one thing for certain: they would face it together.